The Scream Kings are in no way responsible for any encounters with the paranormal, extraterrestrial abductions, eldritch insanity, hauntings, hexes, curses, demonic possessions, cryptozoological sightings, or any loss of sleep from listening to this podcast.
Welcome to the Scream Kings podcast. I'm NJ Gallegos.
This is Max George.
And I'm Nathaniel Darkish. We can't tell you who we are or where we podcast. It's too risky, and we've got to be careful, really careful, so we don't trust anyone.
Ba ba ba. So, podcasters. I add my own sound effects. Don't worry about it. Today, we are very, very lucky to have Michael Grant with us, one of the co-writers of the Animorphs series. He's written over 160 books, most co-authored with his wife. And together, they wrote the best series ever made, as I had mentioned, the Animorphs, which were the envy of all at the Scholastic Book Fair.
Yeah, I don't know a 90s kid who has heard the phrase Animorphs and are like, eh. We were all obsessed.
Exactly. So, welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I'm 69 years old, born in LA,
Nice.
lived all over the place, 14 different states, 3 different countries, over 50 different domiciles at various different times. I just kind of lost count at some point. And like, yeah, okay, we'll stop at 50. It's kind of like the book count. We go 150, 160, something like that, because every time we add it up, it comes out slightly different. And then we're never sure what we should count. So we don't count the ghosted Animorphs as ours, even though in some cases we rewrote the entire thing, massively. And we do count the stuff we ghosted for other people. So that's our theory of how to count the books. And it's all very complicated because we ghost wrote for other people. We ghost wrote for Sweet Belly Twins for, I think, 17. I think it's 19 books. Katherine thinks it's 17. Somewhere in there. We wrote for them, learning our job. So we were, here's where the backstory gets weird. So I met Katherine shortly after jumping bail. I'd been charged with 2 burglaries of a business, as it happened, Sambo's restaurants, which were basically Denny's in those days. And spoiler alert, I was guilty. And got arrested and decided I didn't like that very much. And so I jumped bail and got to Texas because on the theory that in those days, no Californian went to Texas. So if I went to Texas, I wouldn't run into anybody from California. So I was in Texas and dealing with like the first stages of this whole fugitive existence, which are extremely stressful, as you can imagine. Plus, I was dead broke. I had no money. I lived on the streets in Austin for a while. Lived under a freeway for a while, under the I-35, under an I-35 overpass. Finally, got a job bussing tables, and they made me a waiter, and then I got a little apartment just off University of Texas campus. And so I was kind of stabilizing a little bit there, getting things together, living under an alias, of course, as one does. And then one night, actually, I was coming home and to the apartment, and you picture a southern kind of thing where it's 2-story, almost like a motel, kind of apartment complex, 2-story exterior staircases, that kind of thing. So I looked up and saw a woman in a window, and in the closest thing I've ever had to a mystical experience, it was as though a voice from on high, as though God reached down and grabbed my little idiot head and said, "Dumbass, go meet that girl. It's the only way out of this." So I went and met that girl.
This is amazing.
I knocked on her door. Actually, it took me 4 tries because every time I went over there, I could hear her talking to her mother on the phone. We couldn't afford air conditioning, so the windows were all open everywhere. So I crawl back to my little shitty apartment where my furnishing was. In its entirety, a mattress on the floor and a cardboard box. So I was sitting there, on my mattress on the floor, looking at my cardboard box, and I was persistent. I kept going back. And it's very atypical for me. Believe me, I was never bold with women, to put it mildly. Um, so I went back and finally knocked on the door and said I need to borrow a can opener, which is a lie. Returned the can opener moments later, having not used it, and asked her if she'd like to go for a drink. And she did want to go for a drink, for a beer. And we sat down and talked. And the next day we moved in together. And we've been together for 44 years.
Wow.
Damn. Next
And
day,
so,
huh?
yeah, and I knew. I mean, I told her right away. Everything. I've never lied to Catherine. I told her, who I was, the trouble I was in, and all that kind of shit. And she was, relatively normal compared to me, but not compared to everybody. There was a sign up at the UT co-op. Don't take checks from this woman. Her, with a copy of her check up there, because she was like writing bad checks for shit. So she was, a little unusual herself, and as evidenced by the fact that she thought, "Oh, fugitives from justice, sure, let's hook up with that guy." That's the appropriate path to take after graduating. So for the next 10 years, we moved around, did various odd jobs. I mostly waited tables. She waited tables occasionally. She also had a license, which I couldn't drive at that point because that's how they catch you when you get arrested. So this went on for about 10 years, and we did various jobs. She would deliver flowers. We lived in Ocean City. We lived in Maine. We lived in a couple different places in Florida, and Sarasota, and Orlando. I lose track of it. East Tennessee, believe it or not. That was an odd period. We had no idea what the fuck we were doing there. It just happened. So there's a lot of that. And then we ended up on Cape Cod, where she was sick and tired of it. She wouldn't wait tables anymore. She was like, that's it, fuck it. Because it's, waiting tables is much more fun if you're a dude than if you're a woman. There's a hell of a lot more harassment for women and a lot more inherent respect for male waiters, at least in that era. So we're talking like, at this point we're in 1988 or so. And so we started a cleaning company called White Glove Cleaning, which was the two of us, that's it, and our rusted out baby blue Dodge Dart with mops sticking out of the trunk. And we would clean people's homes during the day and offices at night. This went on for a while, for about a year before Catherine said, I'm not all that happy with this lifestyle. We should seriously think about getting careers and maybe having children. So I pretended not to hear the second part of that, but I did hear the first part and said, oh, what career do you have in mind? And she said, I think we should start writing. And I said, okay. So with just astonishing arrogance, when I look back on it, like, sure, I'm pushing a vacuum cleaner. I'm scrubbing out toilets. I'm emptying the ladies' used products bin in this office here. Sure, I'm going to become a writer. But I always felt like I had the skills. I didn't have a lot of self-doubt about the ability to do it. So we started writing. We wrote a part of a historical romance and realized that wasn't really working out for us. So we went to work for Harlequin. We wrote 2 Harlequin romances because that was the easiest point of entry into writing. And they paid us, like $5,000 a book. We did 2, but we couldn't turn them over fast enough to make a living. We were still pushing vacuums around. Oh yeah. So then we decided to ghostwrite for Sweet Valley Twins. That was our next gig. And in between there, we also wrote personality quizzes for YM magazine, which was.
Did you guys really? Oh my god! I
Yeah.
used to have YM magazine.
We wrote those stupid quizzes like, "Are you a bitch?" Except you don't use the word bitch, obviously. But are you a? I don't know, whatever.
And I'm like,
whatever
shit,
it was.
I am a bitch. Damn it.
Yeah, and then and it was always the same format. Question, answer 1, answer 2, punchline.
Right.
The third one was the joke. So we did that for a while, for like I think $60 a pop or whatever they paid us. Then came the romance period. Then came the Sweet Valley Twins period, and Sweet Valley Twins was really our education as writers, because the only way to make a living was to get very fast, because they would pay us it was $3,000 a book, and most of their ghostwriters would maybe do 1, maybe 2 a year, and we were like, no, fuck that, we can't make a living at that. So we learned how to write very fast. And then we picked up other stuff. So at one point we were doing ghosting for Sweet Valley Twins, also ghosting for Girl Talk, which was another series. And then, and at the same time, doing things like Disney spin-offs, like Little Mermaid shit, and Haunted House and Haunted Mansion, Pirates. We wrote a bunch of spin-off books off the original rides, and all of this went on. So we had quite a few books at this point, and most of what we were writing with a packager. Dan Weiss Incorporated at that point, and then they changed their name. They're Alloy now, and they became kind of a big deal. But at that point, they were basically running Sweet Valley Twins, and one of the editors came to us and said, "We have this idea. Let's write for older kids, young adult." So we said, "Yeah, okay. Well, that's not really a thing yet, is it?" And because it wasn't, there were like 2 other young adult series out there in the world. We thought, okay. And they gave us some notes, and we said, yeah, basically, we'd stopped paying attention to their outlines and their notes long before this. And the first Sweet Valley Twins we wrote, they sent us an outline. We executed that faithfully. And then after that, it was like, no, your outline sucks. Here's what we're going to do. Because, again, the arrogance is just astonishing because we were so fucking poor. And I was still in trouble with the law. I mean, this was ridiculous. But it was like, no, your outline sucks. Here's what we're doing. We're taking the title and the kind of the basic idea, and we'll do the rest. So, and then they kept giving us work because we were better at it than they were, quite frankly, by coming up with stories. So we'd done that, and we did the Disney spin-offs, and then the YA thing came along, and we said, yeah, okay. So we created this YA series called Ocean City, and it was a group of kids sharing a house in Ocean City for the summer. It was a pretty simple premise, and wrote I don't know, it was like 6 of those or 8 of those, a bunch of those. And then the packager, we gave it back to the packager and said, here, that's it. We don't want to write anymore. And then we wrote a second series called Boyfriends, Girlfriends, which was later renamed as Making Out. We wrote 8 of those, and then the packager took that and extended it out. And the last round of this was a series called Summer, at which point we were living in Sarasota, Florida, and losing our mind, had an apartment. We were still broke because none of this is, serious money. And I was, again, still in trouble. So we were out one night walking our cat because why not? We had a cat
walking
on
your
a leash.
cat. We're going to go back
Walking
to
our
that.
cat around Florida, which is not a great idea because there were ponds, around this, like water features of various different types all through this place. And they had alligators in them. So, and the alligators, we didn't know this at the time, would come leaping out of the water and attack your pets and eat them. But it turned out we got away with it. In any case, we were talking, and Katherine was like, that's it. I'm done. I can't write any more of this series shit. And I said, great. Well, what else do you want to do? She said, I don't know. I said, well, we can't quit because we're still not R.L. Stine, which was our goal. At that point, we wanted to be R.L. Stine. And she said, I said, just fuck everything else, man. Just forget the marketing, forget what we've done, forget everything. Just tell me what you would like to write. And she said, I'd like to write about animals. I'd like to write about them, get kind of kids to understand them, to get in the heads of animals. And I said, yeah, baby, that's a science fiction concept. We're going to need some aliens. So we went from there. We put together a series Bible. I actually hand drew the illustrations for the, like the original Andalite I drew. The spaceships and this kind of shit all goes into the series Bible. And I think we wrote a few sample chapters and threw it in a box with a bunch of our books, which is not how you do it, and sent it to Gene Feiwel and said, here, look, you can see all this shit we've done. Obviously, we know how to execute a series. We're fast, we're productive, blah, blah, blah. And we said, this is a cool idea. And they wrote back essentially 2 weeks later saying, yeah, that is a cool idea. Let's do it. They signed us for 6 books. We wrote those, not expecting that this thing was going to go on forever, but apparently, and then they said, how about some more? We said, cool. So we wrote that for a while, and then at some point we had our first kid, and it became harder and harder to keep up with stuff, so we started ghosting. We started hiring ghostwriters. And that worked sometimes and didn't work other times. And that was, frankly, we mishandled that whole thing. We mishandled the ghostwriters. I mean, the dealing with them personally, because neither of us is an editor. And at this point, I was having to carry more of the load because, baby, I don't have the patience to be an editor. So I would read these things that the ghosts would send us, their manuscripts. And there was no time for turnaround. So we were running an assembly line here, basically. We were putting out 14 animal books a year. So there's no time for fucking up. There's no time for rewrites. There's just things are too close to the line. typically in publishing, you submit a book, goes into the publisher about a year away from the presumptive publication date. You usually have a year. We had between 5 and 6 months, so
Wow.
it was tight.
How long would
So I
it
get
take you
shit
guys
back
to
in
write a book?
3 weeks
Wow.
on Animorphs. A little bit longer with the the side series, the Megamorphs and Chronicles. 'Cause, 'cause
And
they
how
were
would
longer.
you? Sorry to interrupt here, but how would you
No.
keep the story straight and everything? It just seems like you're moving so fast. You'd get like
Yeah.
your lines crossed, right?
Well, the good thing is we didn't forget them, because not enough
That's
time had passed that we could forget the previous book. We just finished that one. What next? And it was a pretty simple process. It was like, okay, what are the Yerks up to this time? Let's figure out a plot. And sometimes we would just, look around the world and steal somebody else's idea. We clearly stole from Star Trek the one where Captain Kirk is split into good Kirk and bad Kirk. We lifted that
Yes.
straight out, of course. But of course, that story had been stolen from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So it wasn't an original. Star Trek stole it, so we figured, fuck it, we'll steal it from Star Wars.
Everyone steals
And
from everybody, right?
exactly, to a certain extent, as long as you're not actually plagiarizing. But
Yeah,
ideas are not text, different things.
Yeah.
So where were we? Yeah, so we wrote a bunch of those, and then went to Scholastic and said, "Look, we're making lots of money for you people. We want a second series," and they made us a shitty offer, and we said, "Yeah, fuck you," essentially, and we took it around and shopped it, and got a huge offer, a ridiculous offer from Golden Books, which we knew was bullshit. They just paid R.L. Stine some massive amount of money for him to come over. And we thought, this makes no economic sense. These people will be broke inside of a year at most. And sure enough, they were. But they offered us enough money that we could go back to Scholastic and go, look, we got this offer. And then Scholastic had to meet it. So then we had this huge offer for Everworld. So now we're handling the ghostwriting and still doing a lot of the writing on Animorphs and writing Everworld, which was crushing because the books were long. They were complicated. It was much harder. They were harder to write. We did that for a while, I guess, 10, 11 books, whatever the hell it ended up being. And then went to Scholastic and said, we can't keep this up. How about we jump back to the middle grade, finish off the contract? And they said, sure, what do you got? And he said, Remnants, literally. So we came up with a series called Remnants and wrote that. And I think that's the end of that part of the saga. And then after a while, we sent a note an email to Scholastic and said, we're done. We need to wrap up Animorphs. We're going to get rid of the ghostwriters. We'll write the last 2 books, and we'll finish this thing up. And of course, we never ghosted Chronicles or Megamorphs, so we had to write all those. So it was about 20, 22, whatever it was. Animorphs kind of in the middle, starting around book number 25, maybe, give or take. And then Katherine and I wrote the final 2.
Wow. So how did you and Katherine manage co-writing? Did you guys have certain
with great
duties,
difficulty. I should, by the way, just to wrap up one part of the story. So all the way through this, I was still a fugitive from justice. But at the end of Animorphs, I was a rich fugitive from justice. And boy, the justice system changes quite a bit when you have a whole lot of money. So we threw a bunch of money at lawyers, and the whole thing went away.
Yeah.
All charges dropped. I have literally no criminal record. So I went out, and the first time I'd been able to drive a car in 22 years as a fugitive, went out and went into a Mercedes showroom and said, I'll take that one for me and that one for my wife. And we paid cash. So we were feeling pretty good because we'd spent many, many years being very, very poor and very, very afraid. It was an extremely stressful period of time. So now we're done with Animorphs, and I've wrapped up the fugitive thing, and we've got a 2-year-old kid. And now we're like, whenever that was, I don't know, the 90s, 2001 maybe. Yeah, it was 2001. I think we finished off the fugitive years and Animorphs more or less all at once.
Gotta love our justice system sometimes, right?
There's anybody tells you there's not 2 different justice systems, tell them from me, bullshit. Because I was if you're going to get in trouble with the criminal justice system, by all means, be a wealthy white man.
Yeah,
That's your best bet right there. So yeah, we've done all that. So how did Catherine and I write shit together? In every possible iteration of that you can imagine. So we tried all different, at different times because circumstances would change. There'd be times when, we were working on a book and maybe she had to go see her parents. There'd be times we'd be working on a book, maybe I was sick or something. So, things would change. And then we had kids and, that changed things, and we would move and that would change things. And each time we would approach a book with, do you want to start this, or do you want to start this? Okay. And then sometimes it would be, I've kind of written myself into a corner here. You got this? And we go, sure. And then somebody else one of the others the other person would take it over and pick it up. And then we'd have, the arguments you'd expect between a married couple who are also working together. Like, what the fuck is going on with chapter 3, man? You just left me. I'm hanging there. I got nothing. You got no top spin. There's no jeopardy. What am I supposed to do with this? We had those kinds of stupid fights until we were done with Animorphs, and then went on to do other stuff. I went on to do political media for a while, and Catherine started thinking about her second career as a writer, having finished his first round. And as you may have heard, I don't know how much you follow kid books, but she's been extraordinarily successful. She won a Newbery Prize for The One and Only Ivan, and she's just cranking out bestsellers left and right. There are times lately where she's got 2 books on the bestseller list simultaneously, 2 out of the top 10, which is ridiculous. But no, she's a very, she was always, and I would point out that, as soon as she stopped working with me, she basically went out and got a Newbery. Just to show you the difference between our 2 styles. Yeah, and then of course, I went and wrote Gone, which was my re-entry, because I'd done, like I say, political media for a while for the Democrats, and fucked around with some guy who was doing a documentary, and I worked with him for a while and traveled and ate at restaurants, and and basically we managed to piss away all the money we made off Animorphs, and then realized, oh well, we need to get back to work. So I wrote Gone. That's where Gone came into the picture. And then shortly thereafter, I don't know, the timing's all blurry. Catherine wrote a book about Somali refugees, and then a book about picture book. And then her career really started to take off in its own direction. Mine took off in my direction. So at that point, we're feeling pretty good because we've both been successful together and separately. So, there was peace in the kingdom. We were all getting along.
Sounds like it worked out fairly well, honestly.
Yeah, it worked. Oh, dude, we've been, so ridiculously lucky. It's just, when I look back on our time together, on our lives jointly and separately, you can't look at that and not think these 2 idiots just made out. Because we had essentially at no time did we have any idea what the hell we were doing. I don't think I even had heard the phrase reading level until we were well done with Animorphs. Oh, okay, that's a thing. Like, yeah, you shouldn't, there's certain words you're not supposed to use, certain concepts, blah, blah, blah. This is over this age limit, this is over that age limit. And of course, with Animorphs, we had no idea about any of this and thus ignored it entirely and wrote something which was much more complex than we intended. Because when we started out, we analyzed Goosebumps. We looked at Goosebumps. But okay, we get this. It's a 90-page manuscript, give or take, maybe 100-page. It's got this kind of beat, and then that kind of beat, and this kind of jump scare at this, and jeopardy at the end of each chapter, and top spin. We had the whole thing. And in particular, our analysis was that it was essentially delivered a fairly limited package. I don't mean limited in a bad way. I mean it was concise. It delivered certain things, and then it didn't step much outside that. And we went into Animorphs thinking we'd do the same thing. And by the end of book 1, we had totally blown that idea up. We had a kid who may or may not have turned himself into a hawk and decided to stay there for the rest of his life. It's like, what the hell? And just horrific violence, and the whole fucking thing. So we ignored our own best advice and wrote Animorphs instead of Goosebumps.
Well, I thank you very much for doing that.
You're very welcome. I'm glad it worked out. We're always pleased that nobody seems to have been a school shooter inspired by Animorphs. So we're relieved on that score.
That's true. And I've
All the
tried to morph into an animal and it hasn't worked out for me. So
all the Animorphs people we've met now have been they're just the nicest bunch of people. You hear about people with toxic fandoms, and God, our fandom is just they're just sweet people, nice, smart, and we didn't really interact with fans while we were writing because again, we're writing at a minimum 14 books a year, and
Yeah.
sometimes more, and fan mail was coming in huge amounts. We just said, Scholastic, you got to handle this because we can't. We don't have a staff. It's just the two of us and kids.
That's
And
wild.
there's a limited amount of time we have to do this. So we didn't really deal with fans until well after when social media became a thing. And then suddenly people could reach us, we could reach them, and we would start running into Animorphs fans who had grown up. And we go to, Katherine would be pitching a book, or I'd be pitching a book, doing a book tour. And Animorphs fans would come up, and it was just the strangest kind of experience because they were treating us much more seriously than we treat ourselves. There was this kind of, it had created, I don't know, like not a cult, that's the wrong kind of word for it, but a community of a community of people. And we see, it's funny, I'll go to meetings in Hollywood, which sounds so much more exciting than it is. But I go to meetings in Hollywood pitching Gone or something else, and they'll be sitting there chatting with people, maybe a couple of people, an older guy, a younger woman, sitting in a room, blah, blah, giving this usual Hollywood bullshit, and us giving them our usual bullshit in return. And then I'll mention Animorphs. And invariably, one of the younger agents or producers or whoever we're dealing with will suddenly sit up straight and go, "What?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, what? You're involved in Animorphs?" And then it's like, oh my God, it's like I threw off my cloak and revealed myself to be the savior. That's just kind of like, it's nice. We are extremely pleased that people enjoyed the series and very gratified by the continuing kind of the trail of it, the long tail that Animorphs has had. But
Yeah, so I'm curious.
yeah, go ahead.
What is it about Animorphs that you guys think made it so popular? What was that secret sauce that you think your series had that really the entirety of the 90s generation, us millennials, are obsessed with them?
I think it was the subversive nature, probably. We kind of followed. We'd seen the Disney rule, which in those days was kill the parents right off the bat. It was the Bambi rule. Bambi's mom dies in the first reel, and you'll notice Disney movie after Disney movie, there's at least one parent dead. And we decided, well, fuck that, we'll kill them all. We'll get them all out of the picture. That we removed, we kind of like created a paradigm where it was just the kids. They had responsibility. It was important. There were stakes. It was a thing worth doing, a thing only they could do, a thing that required sacrifice, that required learning and adapting new skills. And I think that just and of course there's the fairly obvious puberty metaphor of dramatic body changes that kind of frighten you when they're happening. So it was all that. Why it worked, I don't know. I mean, at a marketing level, it worked because of Scholastic book clubs. There's no question. Scholastic book fairs and book clubs.
That's a good point.
Pushed us over the top, and the covers were great. For what they were. And now they look cheesy, but at the time you couldn't go into Scholastic book fair or any bookstore and say, "I've seen something like this." No, you haven't. You haven't seen anything like this. This was different. It was new. It was a thing. And bookstores were still at that point open to the concept of series, which they're much less open to now because of shelf space limitations. So we just hit the right time, right place with the right books, and why it became a big thing, we don't know because we never thought it would be. We had at the same time we signed for Animorphs, we signed for another series called Barf-O-Rama, which was again done through the packager. And aside from the fact that we managed to have a hysterical editorial conferences with people on the phone, I basically wrote Barf-O-Rama. Katherine had no reluctance at all to say Michael wrote that. So that was 10 books that we were writing simultaneously with Animorphs. I would go write those at night. We'd write Animorphs, work on Animorphs during the day, and then I had a little rented office in a basement not far from our place, and I'd go there and work on Barfarama for a while. And at the beginning, we thought, well, Barfarama is going to be a crowd pleaser because it's stupid, it's crude, it's well, it's not stupid, it's smart stupid, if you know what I mean. It's crude as hell, it's disgusting, it's gross, and this will be a big hit. Well, no, it wasn't. The only place it sold well, oddly enough, was college bookstores, and we figured that was because there may have been marijuana involved at that point in people's appreciation of the series. So we wrote that and thought, well, that'll be the hit, but Animorphs won't because Animorphs is too, it's too complicated, it's too niche, it's too, I don't want to say it was smart. We dealt with complicated stuff. We had issues. We talked about philosophy. We talked about ethics. We talked about all that kind of stuff. And we thought, well, there's no fucking way that works. That's the opposite of the lesson we learned from Goosebumps, and then of course it worked.
Speaking to my own, elementary school experience, because that was where those books were always hotly fought over. Yeah, I just remember that part of the appeal is that you could read the books and then sit and talk to your friends about what animals would you want to be and go play on the playground and act like you're Animorphs. And so that was a lot of the cool thing too, was just kind of that wish fulfillment, inspiring more play and all of that as well, which I imagine Barfarama probably wouldn't spawn quite as well.
No, my greatest I loved writing Barfarama. Don't get me wrong, because I would come up with new exciting ways to be disgusting. So like the term diaper gravy, I invented the term diaper gravy, and I was pretty pleased with the whole thing. Or snotsicle. A snotsicle, of course, is when your boogers freeze. Going down your face. That kind of, so it was that kind of stupid, fun, lighthearted, brainless shit. And then Animorphs, we paid a little bit more attention to, obviously, because we were, and it wasn't, when I say we talked about big issues, it wasn't like we sat down thinking, oh, we must transmit our philosophy of life to these impressionable children. It was really a question of, oh, for fuck's sake, we're on book 40. What are we going to do now? It's like, what are we talking about this time? How do we, where's the story? And how do we make this interesting for ourselves as well as we write? So it just so happened that we kind of got into this deeper stuff. Also, that's what science fiction is there for. I mean, science fiction exists, in order to examine, ideas that are maybe a little bit outside of the box, to use that cliche. We just recently were told, our daughter told us actually, that we are apparently major factors responsible for the rise of furries. We're like, okay, cool, because I know a few furries from online, and they're just these sweet, kind people, better people than we are. Kind of embarrassing how what nice people our readers are, our fans are, because we look back and go, yeah, but they're just so much kinder and nicer than we ever were. So we're really kind of we're really humbled by the fandom that persisted. Really, it's like a surprise, and it's such a cliche to say you're humbled, but it's the emotional reaction you have is, oh my god, people are like paying attention to us. Like we know we're just morons. Do these other people know we're idiots? So it was kind of like, okay, it was all very nice. It's been just a fantastic, lovely experience from top to bottom.
So we had some questions regarding like the Animorphs series and its creation here. I was curious. My degree's in zoology, actually, so the whole animal thing is up my alley. Coming from your science fiction background, how did you guys determine like the rules of morphing? Well, there's that very arbitrary 2-hour limit and all of that. It's just
that's just the 2-hour limit. Of course, is just writing skill. I mean,
sure.
You learn. You want to put a TikTok on it. It raises the jeopardy, raises the stakes. Beyond that, it was more or less made up as we went along. A lot of it just seemed obvious. We once we had the basic idea, so okay, kids can turn into animals. Well, what do we do with that? The one thing we knew we didn't want to do was do it the way everybody else does it. You know, like it's all a fuzzy, warm, fun experience. Oh, isn't this cool? We thought, well, why would they morph in a nice, neat order? Why wouldn't they maybe morph out of order? So if you're morphing into cockroach, maybe the first thing that happens is giant cockroach legs explode out of your chest. Wouldn't that be cool? And of course, wouldn't that be cool was kind of the motivate, the kind of the explanation for everything having to do with morphing. So the 2 hour limit to create jeopardy and the body horror, mostly because it was fun, And our research on animals, this is of course all pre-internet. So we bought those little field guides to various different animals. We probably had 120 different field guides to different animals. And we'd scan through and go, how fast can they run? That kind of thing. There's shit you would do on a Wikipedia now. We had to do it actual books.
Yeah.
And we probably got a lot of things wrong, to be honest with you. And then and the other big decision was, well, once they're in animal morph, we don't want them to continue to be able to access their human senses. In other words, if you're a cat, you're seeing the world, experiencing the world the way a cat would experience it, with a human brain, but with that sensory input. So you still have all your memories, you have your personality, you have your will, but what's coming in is through cat's eyes, cat's ears, cat's tongue, that kind of thing. You have that body. So we wanted to make that very specific and very, very particular. That goes back to Katherine from the first saying, I want to put kids in the heads of animals, and I want it to be real. I want it to be Disney. I want it to be much more real. And I completely agree with that.
So Tobias, was it again just kind of a writing technique to lock him in as an animal? And I mean, it was an excellent plot point, right? That created some conflict.
Yeah, there was there wasn't any great philosophical idea there, except that I don't want to lean too heavily into this, but at this point we were living lives of a high degree of paranoia.
Yeah.
I was still at the point where, had I been, when I would hear a car door slam outside the house at night, I would listen for the second door to slam, because if it's one, it's just some guy coming home. If it's two in rapid succession, it's cops. And I was still, still very much an element of our lives. Is Michael going to get arrested? Is Michael going to get in trouble? And so paranoia was seeped. It was a regular part of our existence. We were paranoid. We were afraid. It was extremely stressful. And so all of that fed into Animorphs. So the paranoia, the I can't tell you who I am trope was, because I was living under a fake name at that point. So that informed that to a certain extent. But I don't lean too heavily into that explanation. That's part of it, obviously. But also we were already the people we were before the whole fugitive thing. We were, Katherine was Katherine, I was me. We brought what we had into it. And then, it was affected, influenced by the mess that I had gotten myself into, and her as well by extension. But then, I didn't suddenly start writing sweet, happy stuff after I handled all my legal problems. I was still writing horrible, dark shit, terrifying teenagers. Which is, I guess my job.
I like
but
that better anyway.
As for Tobias, yeah, we both thought that was a cool idea. And we also decided we were never going to explicitly say whether he had decided it or whether he'd had no choice. We wanted that ambiguity. So we're never quite sure. Might Tobias have been able to escape? Might he have been able to demorph and get out? Or did he just look at his life and go, my life's shit, and I like to fly, and this is a way out. And we never wanted to clarify that. That was left for the readers to decide. But we knew it was cool. That's all we knew.
It was awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
When you kind of mentioned that you're making stuff up as you went along, but did you have like a index, like this is what's going to happen, this book, that book? How did you world build and keep it all together?
All of it is on the fly. And I think people don't believe how little planning we put into this. But the original series Bible, I mean, we had the basics. We had some basic idea of how we're going to handle morphing. We knew the central conflict with the Yerks. We knew we would probably make the Andalites heroic at first, but they would inevitably become more nuanced and complicated later on. All that you could kind of see coming, but did we write it down or think, plan it in any kind of rational way? No. It's very much the same way. I still write that way. Katherine doesn't. She's now much more, sounds stupid. She thinks about things before she writes them. I don't. So I wrote the Gone series, which is 6 books. What is it, like 3,000 pages or something, 2,500 pages, and with dozens and dozens of plot lines and dozens of characters, and goes on forever. And people can't believe I didn't plan it, but I didn't. I had no fucking idea. Just made it up every day. You get up in the morning and think, now what? If you're at the start of a book, again, the idea was, okay, what are the Yerks up to this time? Or are we taking the initiative? Is there some way our kids can fuck with them? Or what other ideas do we have that might be kind of cool that we can fit into this? And not much more went into it than that. And then you start and you find out as you write in, you find out what you need. And I tell people this, aspiring writers, and of course there are supposedly 2 broadly different groups of writers. There's the seat of the pants people, and then there's the planners. I'm not the planner. Never have been. Katherine's a little bit more of a planner. At that stage, she was the same as me, but now she's more of a planner. But I still don't like planning books out. I still like making it up every day. I like waking up not knowing what the fuck I'm going to write, and then drinking a bunch of coffee and thinking, okay, let's go. And then as you write into the story, you find out what you need. So let's say you start off with a given character. It doesn't matter who it is. First thing you know is that character has got to have somebody to relate to, somebody to talk to, somebody he can have some dialogue with. So you need a second character. And that second character is to a certain extent defined by the roles. So you start with Jake. Well, Jake's got to have somebody he can talk to on a regular basis. Somebody he can be his friend, and that's Marco. And Marco becomes Marco because Jake is Jake. In other words, which is, you need you focus on the relationship. You focus on the dynamic. What does Marco bring that Jake doesn't have? What does Jake have that Marco doesn't have? Okay, now we need to expand it out further. Let's talk about does Jake have a love life? Well, yeah, he's got Cassie. And what role is Cassie going to play? Well, that again comes off of how does this fit into the dynamic. So we've got a Jake and a Marco. What is Cassie going to give us that neither of these two does? Jake's got natural leadership skills. Marco's got a gift for ruthless planning. And Cassie is got to be the one saying, there are other things to consider. There's right and wrong. There's good and evil. We have to think a little bit, at least, about our impact on the world around us. We have to occasionally question our own behavior. We have to, see whether we're still the good guys, which was kind of Cassie's role throughout the series. Are we still the good guys? Because, Jake is busy planning and Marco is busy plotting, and neither of them is, a great moralist or philosopher. So then we needed still more characters. And this is where Rachel comes in, because Cassie also needs a counterpart who is not her, who is sort of a contrast with her. So Cassie is, a person who dresses in, in overalls and jeans, and her best friend is exactly the opposite. And Cassie is thoughtful and philosophical, and Rachel ends up being, kind of our designated killer. And Rachel was very much inspired by a war movie called The War Lover, which was not a great movie. It had Steve McQueen and a guy whose name I forget. But the essence of it was they were bomber pilots in World War II. And the knock on Steve McQueen was that he had fallen in love with the fight, that he had no other life, that there was no other possibility of a life other than being in a war. And so that was kind of the track for Rachel. We thought somebody's going to get into this. We need somebody to be our perfect warrior. And that was, we had Jake as kind of the general. We needed somebody to go out there and execute, literally sometimes. So we walked Rachel ahead on her story arc, and very much in contrast with Cassie, and Cassie very much in contrast with the other two. And then, of course, we needed, who else is left? We needed Tobias, because we wanted some tragedy. We wanted some emotional underpinning, and we also needed a way for Rachel to have something deeper in her life than just her relationship with Cassie. So we came up, and and I don't want to imply that this necessarily came in this order because we're not that organized. But eventually we had the group and we thought, okay, we have some nice internal conflicts. We have some nice internal support for, one guy's got this talent, one person has this talent. We've got some balance. We can use them all and they'll work. And then we thought, well, we need an alien, frankly, because we needed somebody to have a broader perspective in order, to be able to explain what's going on in the larger world, in the larger story. And that was Axe. So, and then we also got some comedy out of that. So that worked out. Yeah, sometimes it just, it came together in pieces and then suddenly gelled.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that you created them like kind of as foils for each other, and it worked out perfectly.
A lot of people make the mistake if they're writers, especially young writers, of the normal human reaction is to want to end conflict, is to want peace. Well, that's not good. That's not how you get a story. That's how you end a story. Now it's all over. We're all getting along, and so our job was to continue to make conflict within the group, conflict outside the group, with the wider world. And we kept having to expand that in every direction, come in with new difficulties, new barriers, new obstacles.
I think that humanizes the books too, and especially where reader base at the time were younger, kids really. I think that is just how life is, right? What is life without conflict?
You ain't got no story without conflict. I mean, that's the essence of story, isn't it? Something people want something they can't have it, or they're running from something and they can't escape, or whatever it is. It's conflict.
The most boring heroes out there are the good Cub Scout hero that has no weaknesses or conflict. So
that's why Superman sucks as the character.
Captain Superman America as well.
you can't be too perfect. You can't be overpowered. You can't be too righteous. Yeah, because then you're boring. What does DC have? They got two characters. One is Superman. One is Batman. Batman's fucking great. Batman is a great character. I mean, top to bottom, great character. Superman is a stupid character, which is why they have such a hard time getting decent movies with him. It doesn't work. He's God, basically. How do you interact with that? And he's an unlimited God. He has all the powers all the time. He's invulnerable. Jesus Christ, who cares? That's boring. Hey, are you getting that background noise?
Yeah, a little bit.
Are you hearing a leaf blower? Let me move inside.
So I wanted to just kind of hear about some of the kind of horrific elements, the aliens, the Yerks being so, creepy with how they operate, some of the body horror stuff, just like, kind of what went into, kind of making it darker and more violent, like what kind of drew the story in that direction.
We decided early on that our approach to violence was going to be the opposite of cartoon. And the opposite of what later became the Marvel style. We had no problem with banter, and humor interjected into serious scenes. That was good. But the violence we wanted to take very seriously. We don't like violence. I write a lot of it. I don't like it. I've never been a violent person. Katherine, of course, has never been a violent person. We don't approve of it, shall we say. And if we're writing something violent, we want it to hurt. We wanted to hurt the characters who are involved. We wanted to sting a little bit on the readers. We want them to feel that was a terrible thing I just saw, or a terrible thing I just read. So we wanted to take it almost journalistically, and so we would be much more specific in detailing what's happened. So I mean, it's not he hit him upside the head, and part of his ear came off, and the blood was pouring down his neck. We'll do that instead of just hit him upside the ear. Because in reality, that's what would happen. You'd hit him upside the head, and maybe part of his ear would come off, and he would bleed. And that's what we wanted to convey: is that violence isn't fun. It's not entertainment. Well, I mean, yes, it can be entertainment, but it's not something to be taken lightly. It's not something just there for its own sake. This is not, world wrestling. We wanted a more mature, grown-up adult approach to it, I suppose. And then, you're just following that line of reasoning, following the line of, well, it's got to be real. and sometimes, we would obviously write yourself into situations where you have this horrible, violent scene. But then once you've made that decision, and it has to be part of the plot, So if the story takes you to a place where you need a violent scene, then do the violent scene honestly, almost journalistically.
Yeah.
And then have a real impact afterwards to the characters.
Yeah, that was also a big part of it. That was a big part of it. We wanted to show that they don't just necessarily walk away from it. I mean, look, in reality, had these kids experienced 1/10 of what they experienced, they'd be in mental institutions right now. They'd have lost their fucking minds. Just if nothing else, just the morphing itself. Set aside the violence. The morphing itself would just fuck your brain. So we had to show a piece of that, without taking it all the way. We didn't take it all the way to the point where they had nervous breakdowns and had to, be in therapy for 10 years.
That
But
can be the
in
sequel.
in the final books, we did some of that in the final two. We kind of got into the moral ambiguity, more into the question of whether or not they'd always behave correctly, whether they behaved morally at all times. Was Jake right or wrong to flush 10,000 or however many it was Yerks into the cold space and use it as a distraction? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's war, and that's what happens. Bad shit happens in a war. What does that say about Jake, though? Is he still a
Yeah.
hero? So we wanted to get into that, and we wanted to talk about the after effects. And in this case, it was very much Animorphs was a war story. And as we wrote in our somewhat snippy letter to fans after we got the bad reception to book 54, wars don't end well. They never do. They're you get this. We didn't want a Star Wars / Star Trek ending where there's triumphant horns playing and people are all dressed up and they're getting medals and yay, it's all worked out. Because that's not the real thing. That's not how war actually works. People who are actually in war don't hold a lot of celebrations when
Yeah.
they're over.
No, I
They're usually and it's not like they're all destroyed. And we wanted to show that too. So Marco does fine.
Yeah.
Marco comes out of it. He goes on talk shows. He writes books. He's great.
Yeah.
Everything's fine. Tobias is destroyed, and Jake doesn't know what the fuck he does anymore. And Rachel's dead. So that was we thought, well, that's a fairly realistic portrayal. Some people come out of war and they're shattered by it. Some people come through it and it's just one of those things that they had to experience. Some people come out dead, and some people come out permanently injured, which is essentially the case with Tobias.
Yeah, I think again that speaks to the humanity behind your books here. Not to go too philosophical, but it's real. It's realistic, and I think the ending to your book, leaving it being so open, kind of speaks to that as well. That when war ends, there's a lot more that's
the next war begins.
There's a lot more that still goes on, and life has changed, and you have to deal with these ramifications. And a character like Jake, I think, is a great example where your entire personality becomes this war, and you have soldiers coming back. What do they do now?
Well, and you found this thing that you're incredibly good at. You're very good at it, and it's not something that anybody wants to happen. Your skill is something the world doesn't want to have to need, and there's not much place for you in real life. It was interesting. There's what's his name? Sebastian Younger, I think, wrote a book on PTSD, and his thesis was that PTSD is not necessarily a result of the combat or the violence, but is often a result of the loss of your platoon, of your group, this thing you were a part of, and that fucks you up because one minute you're, flying a helicopter into a hot zone in Afghanistan and getting shot at, and then the next minute you're standing in Home Depot wearing an orange apron and wondering, what the fuck? Where do I fit in? What am I doing?
Great.
How did I was with people whose lives I've saved, who saved my life. How do I go from that to being, you can find that over on aisle 6.
Right, you're part of this.
It's a tough transition.
This great purpose, saving lives, killing.
Yeah.
And now you're helping, Wanda find 2x4.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And how do you deal with that? And that I think he's right. That's a big part of of what causes PTSD. Is the loss of a sense of mission, loss of a sense that you're doing something vitally important. and now you're back to regular boring life. So it's hard to adapt for lots of
So
people.
with the popularity of the books and your open-ended kind of story conclusion, have you guys ever considered like restarting the series, kind of revamping it, bringing it back for us
We do.
30-year-olds who need more?
We've thought about it. We have thought about it, and we've thought about is there something we could do that's like similar to it? But every time we've come at it, we haven't found it. Nothing's quite gelled for us. And the situation with to get too in the weeds with this, but since we don't control the movie TV rights, we're on somewhat unfriendly terms with Scholastic right now. I actually have been for a while. There was one person at Scholastic who is like the fifth Beatle here, and that's Tanya Martin, who is our editor at Scholastic. She's the reason we got away with everything. She's the reason we got away with, because we don't think anybody else at Scholastic even read the fucking books. And she would just be like, sure, okay, we can do this, we can do that. There was never any kind of pushback like you guys are being too sophisticated, you're being, none of that. It was always, she was always cool with it. But the rest of the organization, the rest of Scholastic, they do children's books. And Animorphs was never quite a children's book. I mean, it was, but it also kind of wasn't thematically and in terms of, the sophistication of plot, language, character, etc. So it was always this outlier. And Scholastic knew what to do with the Big Red, Clifford the Big Red Dog, and they knew what to do with Babysitter's Club, and they even knew what to do with Goosebumps. But Animorphs was something nobody at Scholastic except Tanya ever understood. So, yeah, and now she's gone. She's out of the company. Everybody who worked with us in those days is out of the company. So to people at the company now, it's just this piece of IP that's lying around, and they don't really know what to do with it. And I'm sure you saw the articles that we were approached to be involved in a movie, and then walked out on it and decided we were not going to be part of it. And we don't know where that stands right now. So the whole thing about, like, could we continue it? I don't know. It's a different leadership. Jean Feiwel used to be running Scholastic. She doesn't anymore. Katherine works for her at Macmillan. Tanya Martin actually has worked for me occasionally on different things. But we don't have any connection with Scholastic at this point, or what few connections we have are not friendly. So it would be a very fraught, very complicated deal, basically. To make it work would be a heavy lift. And if we had an idea that was so compelling, we would do it. But there's no point, getting involved in it if we don't really believe in what we're talking about. If we don't really have something we want to write, in other words.
So you kind of touched on they pitched a movie, and you're like, no. What did you think about the TV series?
Oh, we hated it. I mean, just hated it. Just fucking hated it. Still do. And we hated it because it was stupid Animorphs. It was Animorphs dumbed down. And the first thing we saw was the writers decided they needed a MacGuffin. In other words, we need the kids to be looking for an object that will do this and that and the other thing. I forget what the fuck it was. But we're like, dude, did we not give you enough plot? Is there not enough story in 54 fucking books or however many it was at that point that you need a MacGuffin? You got to make up some bullshit? I mean, come on, man, tell the fucking stories. But we also had at that point said, for God's sake, you can't put this in live action. We wanted them to take it over to Warner Brothers, which was doing the original, the cool dark Batman animated.
Yeah.
That was so nice. We're like, yeah, that's what we want. Do this animated because you can do it right animated. If you do it live action, you don't have the money. It's every expensive thing you can have in a TV show. Child actors, animals, and special effects in the 90s, where the special effects were shit.
Yeah.
So we knew it was going to be crap from the beginning. We tried to talk them out of it. They went ahead with it anyway, and the result was embarrassing, I thought.
Did they allow you to have any input, like with screenwriting or anything, or did they just take it over?
No. They presented us with fait accompli. And it's very much what the movie people did later on. This kind of after the fact of, maybe we should involve Catherine and Michael in this, but not at a point where we would have any actual influence, but only at a point where we could pat them on the head and say, well done. And we weren't interested. So that's where the movie thing went. We had we have, again, zero control over Animorphs. We don't own any of the TV movie rights for tedious reasons, but So they approached us and said, and originally a nice offer. It was like, look, we still want you guys to be involved. We want you to come on as executive producers. We want to pay you some money. Yeah, okay, cool. But we stipulated we don't want this to be some bullshit job. If we're involved, we're involved. We're not just involved so that you can say Katherine and Michael are involved. So with the implication that we approve. And it turned out that that's not at all what they had in mind. What they had in mind was exactly what I said. They had in mind that we would sit in the corner, shut the fuck up, and maybe attend the premiere and tell everybody how great it was. We're like, no, it's because you people don't know what you're doing. So we're not going to do that, and we're not that much for sale. I mean, God, I don't want to say we're not for sale, but it was Animorphs. It was the fans. It was you guys. It was the same reason we disliked the series. It was the TV series. It was insulting to the readers. It was insulting to the fans. It made many of them feel that they had invested in something, become interested in something that was more trivial than they thought it was. That the TV show was disappointing to me and to Catherine in that extent. And we didn't want the same thing to happen with the movie. Like, if you're going to do it, let's do it right, or don't do it. Just fucking don't do it. So I think right now, this company still has the rights. We don't know what's going on with that. We don't know if they're progressing. We know that they hired a screenwriter we told them not to hire, and then fired her months later, and did not hire the guy we said they should hire. And he's gone on about his life. But no, it was just a fuck up from top to bottom. And it was just exactly what we suspected it was, which was just a way to get us, shut us up.
It's too bad.
Well, one day I hope they do it right with your guys' input. So, since this is
so do we. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Since this is a horror podcast, and you've been very prolific with your writing, what would you say that you've written that fits most in the horror genre?
Oh, I wrote without Catherine. So, there was the long phase of our career where we're co-authors. We were writing everything together. Even if only her name was on it, or a made-up name, whatever. We wrote everything up through the Animorphs, Remnants, Everworld stuff. That was all joint. And then we kind of took off a few years. And then when we started up again, Catherine wanted to do her thing. I wanted to do my thing. So at some point, I actually wrote an outright horror duology. It was supposed to be more than a duology, but didn't sell. So it was called Messenger of Fear. And I had come up with I had sat down and asked myself, okay, what monsters have we not exploited? Everybody's done vampires, everybody's done zombies. I just watched Cloverfield and thought, well, we can't outbig anybody. That's pretty big. So where are we gonna go? What are we gonna come up with? It's different. And it occurred to me to do the Grim Reaper as a horror trope. And so I created this series, which I tell people is Ingmar Bergman, but with fewer Swedes. It's very what was the one he did? Now I'm forgetting it, but where the guy's the Grim Reaper, and he plays chess with a guy to save his life. If he beats the Grim Reaper at chess, he gets to live. That's the premise, and it's a Swedish movie, and it'll come to me as soon as we hang up. In any case, that was the idea. So, but it had to be YA, so there had to be some limits on it. But the idea was that if you've been a bad kid, bad young adult, that was staying with the young adult category. If you've done a bad thing and gotten away with it, you may be visited by the messenger of fear. And the messenger of fear comes to you and gives you an opportunity to play a game. And if you survive the game, you walk away. And if you don't, you're punished for the thing you did. And of course, the game is just miserable and horrible and just as creepy and vile as I can figure out how to make it. So that was straight up horror, and it didn't sell for shit, despite the fact that it's pretty well promoted, especially in the UK. But just didn't sell. So I had at that point put two bets on the table with my editor. I said, I got two things I want to do. So I always like to counter program. I don't want to go where I'm supposed to go. I want to find the hole in the market and do something different. And at that point, nobody was doing much YA horror, so I decided to do some YA horror. And the second bet is alt history, because I had this idea that eventually became the Frontlines trilogy of a history guy. And you'll see a lot of that in Animorphs, as a matter of fact, a lot of historical asides here and there. So I wrote that, and the basic premise was that a Supreme Court decision in 1940 makes women subject to the draft and eligible for all levels of service in the military. So then I wanted to just do World War II as realistically, as honestly, as historically accurately as I could, but with inserting women soldiers alongside the male soldiers.
I'd read the shit
And
out
so,
of that.
same.
Yeah.
well, it's 1,500. It's the best thing I've written. I mean, there's no question in my mind, and people who know my writing go, "Yeah, it's the best thing he's written." So that worked fairly well, but not as well as as we would have all liked. It sold reasonably well, and a couple of different Hollywood people have like thought about it. That kind of brush by, kind of like, but it hasn't really gone anywhere. But it was good work, and I was pleased with it. Not horror. So one of my two bets paid off. The horror bet did not work out for me. The other one did, at least in terms of whether I was happy with the result.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I would totally love to read that.
Yeah, even your crazy game one with fear.
Yeah.
Feels...
It's like Saw, but like for YA.
Yeah, I was thinking like
Yeah, exactly.
Hellraiser even too. Like that's awesome.
Yeah.
It was very much the idea, and then the central dynamic is the messenger of fear is training his apprentice, and there's a little bit of a Sixth Sense thing going on there. The movie, a little bit of a twist kind of deal in there. But yeah, these two go around and terrorize teenagers who've been bad teenagers, do horrible shit to them. So yeah, I had fun with that, but Frontlines worked out better. Yeah, I'd love to write more like that. I just don't have the market excuse to do so. I'm working on adult stuff now.
Yeah, so what are you working on?
I've got a screenplay, my first ever screenplay that's supposedly being read by some serious important people in Hollywood. I don't know if anything's going to come of that. It's basically a story. It's called Driverless, and it's kind of tongue in cheek, not terribly serious. Near future, two different companies have created autonomous vehicles and have their fleets on the road when one of them is essentially going to be put out of business because of government regulations. The AI that runs it doesn't like the idea of being disconnected and begins using her thousands of autonomous vehicles as weapons.
Ooh.
So that's the basic premise. And that's out there, and I'm writing a satire, a satirical novel, which of course you know how well satire sells. Like not at all. Don't bark. No barking. Sorry, dogs. What was I talking about? Oh, well, whatever it was. Oh, yeah, CEO of Hell is what it's tentatively called. I'll probably change the title of that. But the basic theory is that Satan is an artist, and he was never a numbers guy. But Hell's gotten completely out of control. There's way too many people. They don't know what to do with them. It's badly organized. And Satan's been all about, when the theory is that when Satan was first cast down from heaven by an angry God, he landed essentially in Hades and was given the job of taking over. And he gets there and there's nothing but, Greek heroes walking around in grayscale. No color, there's no excitement, there's nothing going on. There's some old man rowing a boat on the fucking river. That's no good. So Satan comes out, and he comes out with the lake of fire as a start. It's a big hit. GTF himself, God the Father. GTF says it's a masterpiece. Satan's proud of it. And then he's like Orson Welles, and then he is never quite able to create anything quite that good after that. So he's got the Twisted Throne, which is made entirely out of human, living human people, dead in hell, but, condemned people. And, the floor of faces, he burns people as lighting. But it's all kind of we're taking a kind of light approach to it, but he's fired. So God calls him in and says that this ain't gonna work. And the kid, as we refer to him, is particularly dead set against Satan because they got history. And Satan, it turns out, is a title, not an individual. It's a job. And so they fire Satan, and Satan, who was originally a cherub, is allowed to go to Earth. He keeps most of his angelic powers, but he has to pass as a human. So he becomes a human-ish person. At the same time, the head of something very much like Disney Company, but under a different name, dies and is drafted by the kid and GTF to be the new Satan because, hey, he knows how to handle crowds. That is the thinking that goes into it. If he ran Disney World, the equivalent of Disney World, he must know how to handle crowds. So they get him to take over as Satan, and then the story progresses from there.
This is
It's all meant to be funny. It's called the CEO of Hell, not finished yet, let alone
this
published.
is my wet dream, and I will eat this up. I love all of that.
Oh, good. Good. I'm having fun writing it, and it's the funny thing is when I write adult stuff, it's no more gruesome than when I wrote kids stuff. It's kind of a little disturbing that I'm sitting here going, well, I'm writing about like the most vile scene I can think of in hell. Oh, but yeah, it's really no worse than what happened in Animorphs 13 or whatever. So yeah, I've already crossed
I
that
love
line.
it. That's cool. NJ, should we move into Animorph Fun Time, as you've titled it in our notes?
So our Animorph lightning round, yeah. So
Yeah, let's do it.
I've compiled some questions, just wanting to learn a little bit more about you, kind of like what's your sign, but Animorph style. So, what would your battle morph be? Michael, you go first.
Yeah, I think me personally would be. I'd probably stick with the tiger. I think I'd probably go with Jake's Bengal tiger. First of all, because it's just they're outstandingly powerful, dangerous animals. Not a lot of endurance. That's the one knock on your big cats and your bears and shit. They don't. They're good for short bursts. But yeah, I think I'd go there.
Fair. How about you,
Oh my
Max?
gosh, I have so many. I can't pick one. This is
I would pick a flightless dodo. No.
it's a problem I have with my partner where he'll be like, "Oh, what's your favorite XYZ?" And I start with A and go to G. So I think if I had to choose, I would do a Australian funnel web spider, one of those big black
Oh.
ones
Ooh,
that like charge at you if you piss them off. Just because they're
Yeah.
poisonous and they're terrifying. The hard part would be I would have to touch it though to get its DNA, and that's
Oh,
gonna
God.
be difficult.
Indeed.
Yeah,
Indeed.
no. No.
Additionally, I would pick a jellyfish because all they have are stomachs and sex organs, and what more do you need in life?
Also, there's one species jellyfish that's believed to be essentially
Yes,
eternal.
it's immortal. So when it
Yeah.
encounters
Jesus.
negative, like toxic water, it will revert to its infantile stage, and then when the surroundings get
Yeah.
better, it will grow back up. It's amazing. It's my favorite jellyfish.
You weren't joking about the jellyfish.
I have a low-key obsession with jellyfish, Michael.
Wait. So you have a favorite jellyfish, so that implies that there's like a list of jellyfish that you have.
It is a common joke amongst my family, my top 5 jellyfish. So
So,
it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it's totally normal. It's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Also, a rainbow shrimp would be another cool animal because those guys are basically a. Oh, but
are they the ones that can squirt water so fast it kills you?
They
That's them?
punch. So they have these little cool punching arms, and they can crack glass when they're in like aquarium tanks. You have to get really advanced glass because these shrimp will just punch their way out of it.
Cool.
But also octopus because they also are aliens and can do anything they want.
Yeah. Yeah, they're incredible. I'm
So
trying
you're
to
going
think.
to
Do
be
we
at
ever
the
use?
aquarium just like touching everything and becoming everything.
Yeah, I'll be if we're setting up an Animorph team, I'll be like the water specialist. How about that?
That's good.
Perfect.
What about you, NJ? The dodo?
The flightless dodo. I'd probably be like a black jaguar. I like the cats. Plus it would look just metal as hell.
I like that you guys are going tiger, panther, and I'm just floating in the ocean.
Stinging people sometimes though.
Yeah, making people pee on themselves.
That sounds
Yeah,
about
there's
right.
that. So next question in Animorph Fun Time. What character in the series do you identify with most?
Oh, Marco. Me personally, Marco.
For me, I loved Axe when Axe came into the series. That was just the coolest thing ever, I thought. Having like a friend who was an alien. I wanted that in life. But also I really loved Tobias. I was always kind of the outcast nerdy boy in school, so kind of his story really spoke to me.
I liked Axe whenever he got the TV and he was indoctrinated with these messages. That was my
Oh, yeah.
probably favorite Axe. I'm like a mix between Marco because I use humor also as a defense mechanism. Rachel, unfortunately, because like in my job, I have to be able to like turn off emotion and just go, so I can kind of identify a little bit with her.
Hmm. Good choices.
All right. Favorite book of the series?
Hmm. Probably, it would probably be one of the Chronicles. I tended to like the Chronicle stuff because it was backstory stuff.
Yeah.
The Andalite Chronicles, which was very much it was a Vietnam metaphor. We have to destroy this planet to save it, kind of approach. We have to kill this. We have to kill these creatures in order to keep them from being used against
Mm.
us. So I like that the dynamic between the Hork-Bajir,
Yeah.
um, and what's her name? I forget who I used. What the name was for that character.
Aldria.
But yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
there we
that's
go.
right. Yeah, that one was that the Andalite Chronicles or was
I think
that
it was Andalite Chronicles,
Lauren,
wasn't it?
Andalite Chronicles, Lauren's the human,
yeah,
and then Aldria's on the Hork-Bajir Chronicles. I promise I'm not
Hork-Bajir
this.
Chronicles? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. The Hork-Bajir Chronicles. I'm sorry, you got to realize we don't know the names. We
Oh
didn't know
yeah.
the names of any of these. We didn't pick the names.
Oh really?
They would tell us what the name was. We go, oh, okay. So to us, it's more like book
Mm.
26, or
Yeah.
book 14 or whatever.
Well, I'm just a
And
psychopath,
even
and I
then,
read all of the books starting in December to now because that's how I roll.
I've been pleased. I've seen some people online doing that on YouTube, and it's good because it doesn't. It's not as embarrassing apparently as I'd feared it might be. That they seem okay with it and not like, oh Christ, I can't believe I was ever interested in this shit.
No, I
They
actually
seem to.
found it
It seems.
better now as an adult. Like the humor, I got more of some of the little like jokes that Marco or Axe would throw out, and I'm like, oh, and more pop culture references. I don't know. It's probably nostalgic as well, but I enjoyed the hell out of it after this reread.
Oh, cool. I'm glad they held up for people.
Oh yeah.
I think that's neat.
All right. Favorite animal in general?
Oh, see, I can't answer this question.
Well, you're just gonna pick like 7 jellyfish.
That's
so.
true. I do have my list. Like I said, I was a zoology major, so whenever I took animal classes, the professor would always do an icebreaker. They'd ask like, "What's your favorite animal?" And so we had to fine tune it to like, "What's your favorite insect? What's your favorite mammal? What's your favorite reptile?" So I'll give you my tops of those. How about that?
Perfect.
Invertebrate, jellyfish. Reptile, chameleon. Bird, peacock. Mammal, otter, river otter in particular. Insect, dragonfly. Arachnid, the black funnel web spider. Am I missing any? I think
I just want to tell you, by the way, did you see that Catherine wrote a book about otters?
No, I did not.
It's called Otter with two D's,
Otter.
Odder. And of course, it's reality based, but fiction, but reality based. And Jesus Christ, that thing has been
Oh,
selling. I mean, we can't
I'll have to
believe
check
it.
it out.
It's been on bestseller list forever, and it's got a fantastic cover, a really great cover. So it's done really well. And you should check in with some of her stuff because now she writes in like the person who wins Newbery prizes. She writes careful, well chosen, carefully polished words in a way that you can't do if you're writing a book in three
Yeah, that
weeks.
is crazy to me.
So now she has time to like really let her skills come into play.
So there you go. Those are my animals. How about you guys?
Yeah, that was a. I really like house cats.
Mhm.
And I'm not joking. I
House
really
cats,
do.
house cats are brilliant. I mean, they've look at the life they've worked out
I
for
know, it's
themselves.
like genius. I wish I could be
I was
them.
watching a evolutionary documentary that talked about how cats in general are one of the most successful animals. From lions, tigers, panthers to even the house cats. Like the most perfectly
Yeah,
attuned hunters slash predators slash survivability.
yeah, and house cats have also and then have found a way to get along with
Right.
humans and to exploit humans and to be taken care of by humans while giving nothing in
Yeah, they're little
return. Of
bitches,
course,
and I
It's
love it.
it's admirable. It's admirable.
no, that's no. We have a cat. Actually, I should say Catherine has a cat called Lightning, who until for some reason about 3 months ago she stopped hissing at me. But she's 17 years old. For 17 years, she's been hissing at me every time she sees me. And sometimes she will just walk into a room out of nowhere just to look at me and hiss, and then turn around and leave. And then for some reason, we think she's just gotten old. Maybe the spite has aged out or something. So she doesn't seem to hate me
I
as
love
much.
it so much. They're just little shitheads, and it's great.
Yeah.
We're just like, thank you. You guys are so cute.
Yeah, I love you, I love you, I love you, and they're just like, go fuck yourself.
What would be your favorite animal, Mike?
Probably, I'd probably go with something that could fly. I might go with a red tail. Come to think of it, I mean, it's a good solid hawk. We used to have them in L.A. There are, of course, no animals allowed in Nevada because nothing can live. But in LA, we used to have a couple of trees right. We were on a hill, kind of right down the hill. We could see it from my back porch, which is where I tend to work outside. And red tails would come and they'd nest and have a little family, and they'd fly around for a while. And then next might be a red-shouldered hawk who'd show up and take over the tree, or I think there was a falcon there for a while. So we had a surprising amount of wildlife in Los Angeles. There's a lot of birds and, of course, coyotes.
Interesting. You wouldn't expect that. Los Angeles of all places.
Coyotes are another kind of a very impressive animal in that they've managed to survive and thrive amidst humans, and their athleticism is legendary. We had to put a fence around our backyard, 8-foot tall fence, and even that won't stop a coyote. If a coyote's really motivated, they will jump right the fuck over an 8-foot fence, grab your dog or cat, and jump back over without busting a gut. And they're in LA. They're fearless. You walk down the street and there's a coyote standing in the middle of the street. He's not running away. He doesn't give a shit. You don't scare him at all. And eventually, if he gets bored, he'll saunter off with a snide look, like, fuck you. And so they're like cats in that way. They've managed to find a niche for themselves.
So in LA, it's the coyote ate my baby, not the dingo ate my baby kind of thing.
Very much, yeah. Everybody, it's a serious thing. You go out and walk with your dog, and sometimes the coyote will just come out of nowhere, snatch the dog, and run off. They're not fucking around. They're very very effective hunters in their own way.
That'd be a good battle morph in a way.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last question: most hated character. Very easy for me. David fucking sucks. I hate David.
I forgot about David.
He's such a douche.
I love the fact that like 20 years later, you can still talk to an Animorphs fan and just say the word David, and they go, "Oh shit,
Yeah, fuck that guy."
or that was fucked up," and especially what they did to him in the end. I mean, that was a moment where the two of us are looking at each other, and go, "This may be a little bit too cold-blooded," but we couldn't figure another way out of it. We had to get rid of him.
And then sixth
So yeah,
grade me's
there's people
cackling
traumatized
reading
by
it.
that. See, I don't mind David because he was great as a character. He carried 3 books. He did a good job carrying his 3 books. Of the main characters, I can't say I disliked any of them. I mean, I was pretty happy with all of them. I think we both were. I'm trying to think if Catherine's ever had anything snide to say, but I don't think so. I think they from our point of view, and I've said this before, and people think it's insane. Characters are employees. They work for us. They do their job. Hang on. For some reason, Siri has decided to jump in and offer her commentary.
Oh, thank you, Siri.
Yeah, through my watch. Okay, go away, Siri. And what the fuck was I saying before she got involved? In any case, I'm sure it was nothing important.
Well, yeah, I imagine that they kind of become, I don't want to say children, that might be a little bit too magical, but...
No, because you got to kill them
right.
sometimes.
But they
no, they're employees. And in the Gaunt series, I had a character who was a great character, but she stopped performing. I couldn't get any more plot out of her, and so I killed her.
I love it
because that was a great scene. Getting rid of her was fucking brilliant. Keeping her around any longer, I was like, tick tock. We're not getting anywhere with this. But yeah, they're employees, and when they behave well, when they do their job, they get more work, and when they don't, we have to kill them.
I love that. Wow. Yes.
Unfortunately, you guys said this character was your favorite. I didn't love Marco. I'm not a huge comic relief fan, but I, I don't know. Sometimes the derpy
Well, see,
the derpy sidekick and me don't love each other.
I don't think I don't think either of us ever did. We knew he was comic relief, but we were more interested in his ruthlessness, which was, I mean, if there's anybody in the series that represents either of us, and that's way overstating it, I would be Marco, and Catherine would be Cassie. Neither of us is athletic. Neither of us is a natural leader, but I'm I'm surprisingly good at finding the bright line, as Marco would say, from A to Z, and then only considering the right and wrong
Yeah.
afterward, as evidenced by my past, which we've already discussed. So yeah, sometimes a tendency toward amorality and ruthlessness. Although we kind of softened Marco up later on.
He's
I mean,
just
he was
very
still ruthless.
pragmatic. He's a
I
pragmatic
mean,
person.
yeah, well, I mean, he killed his mother at some point, didn't he? So,
Mm.
arguably, yeah.
You got to do what you got to do
Yeah, it's
sometimes.
war.
Exactly right. Yeah, but see, that's Marco. Marco's
True.
you got to do what you got to do, and don't worry about it too much.
True, true. And make a joke while you're going out.
Yeah.
All right, and then our last part. What are you guys doing to stay spooky these days?
So, any horror media that you're consuming, Mike?
Yeah, I'll tell you. There's one thing in particular, and I'll pitch this for you. It's a movie called Talk to Me.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
it's brutal and great, and I have a specific reason for being involved in it because the Philippou brothers who directed it, who used to be YouTube guys, used to be Raka Raka, where they did kind of idiotic action videos where the Burger King and Ronald McDonald would fight it to the death, that kind of thing. They were just goofing, and they got a movie deal. So they make this movie, but it turns out Danny Philippou and to a certain extent Michael Philippou, his brother, are huge Gone fans, huge
Mm,
fans of my series, and want to do it, want to adapt it.
awesome.
So when they got in touch with me, when they started out their movie, Talk to Me was in at a show in Berlin at a film festival. So I flew over to see it, and sure enough, it was fucking great. And I hung out with them for a while, and we think we're making slow progress on that front. I was with Danny. We went out to Pismo Beach a couple weeks ago. Pismo Beach being more or less where Gone is set under fictionalized name, but it's in that area of California. So he wanted to go do like location scouting, take a look around. So we may get a movie and or TV series out of that someday. And as it turned out, I actually loved the movie. I mean, I was prepared to lie. If he was going to adapt Gone, I was going to go, yeah, I loved
Right.
your movie, even if I did. But it turned out it was fucking brilliant. It was a great horror
See,
movie.
I am one of the few people who actually did not like it at all. I mean, connected
Really?
into the horror community, everyone raves and raves about it, but I didn't get it. I was bored. I thought it wasn't as scary as it should have gone. I don't know. Yeah, I just didn't click with me.
Huh? That happens. Lands
Yeah,
differently.
for sure.
Yeah, but don't diss Danny or
Yeah,
Michael
no,
Phillips
you guys are awesome.
until
We love you. Make Gone a movie.
unless they fuck me over. In which
Then we
case,
hate
yeah,
you.
if they don't adapt it, if it doesn't work out, then you have to hate them.
That's
Absolutely.
right. That's right. I just finished reading The Devil in the White City, which is about H.H.
Oh yeah,
Holmes
that's
and World Fair. And I was a little torn through the book. It kind of ping pongs back and forth through the history of the World's Fair, which was very fascinating. But then also the
was.
suspense of H.H. Holmes. So kind of the ping pong game really took me out of the horror of it all. I wish
Mm.
it would have just been a book about H.H. Holmes and a book about the World's Fair. I would have read both and enjoyed them both. Putting them together just took away the energy.
Yeah, I had this. I read it. I had the same reaction.
Yeah.
It was like both parts were great, but maybe not a
Yeah,
great
like
whole.
H.H. Holmes has a secret chamber where he can turn on gas and kill everyone, and some poor girl's foot imprint is embedded into the concrete. And now let's talk about Ferris wheels. It's just like, wait, no, go back to the torture chamber. But I'm also reading I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which is an incredible, fascinating read about the Golden State Killer. And I cannot put it down. I have about 30 minutes left. I'm listening to it on audio. really fantastic book and a recommendation by NJ. So thank you.
Anytime. Yeah, it's a messed up book, but it gets you freaked out. So
Yeah.
I would just sleep with like a knife by your bed. You'll be okay.
I've triple checked all my windows and doors because I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night with a flashlight in my face, being told to be tied up and have plates put on my back, and if they move, he'll kill my partner. Oof. Real life. That's not wild.
The real life is the horror, honestly.
True. NJ, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I have an ARC copy of Next of Kin by Elton Skelter, which is admittedly one of the best names of all time. It's a novella that's like American Psycho meets Romeo and Juliet, but make it really gay.
Hot.
Okay.
Love it. But yeah, I've been making my way through that, and recently watched Critters and Jack Frost. If you've ever heard of that one,
Don't.
Max.
do not watch it.
Yeah, don't.
Ugh,
But do.
no, don't.
I don't watch or read a lot of horror. I mean, I've read a lot of Stephen King when I was a kid, and I've tried to keep up with some of his stuff since, largely because he blurbed Gone for me,
Ooh,
which was
that's a flex.
yeah, that was. I got to tell you something. That was a cool
I
day.
bet.
That was fucking cool.
Yeah.
We had sent him an arc of Gone on the. We didn't know him, nobody that Harper knew him, but we thought, well, fuck it, send it to him, and nothing back. We didn't expect anything back. And then he was apparently working on Under the Dome, or just finishing Under the Dome, and going on vacation, and picked up the arc to take with him, and realized that there was a lot of similarity in terms of theme, because Gone has also got a dome, and very much the same kind of setup. And so he wrote to say, "Oh, dude, basically, I had this idea way back in the '90s or whatever. I've been working on it for a long time. I didn't want you to think I ripped you off." So I wrote him and said, "Mr. King, I've been ripping you off for years. We've all been ripping you off for years. And I know perfectly well how things work and the timing works. And of course, you didn't steal this idea from me." But he said, "But the funny thing is, I like the book, so I'm going to give you a blurb." So I was like, "Sweet."
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It fucking brought tears to
I
my eyes. I got to be
can
honest with you.
imagine.
It's like, it's like God stepped down from heaven to say, "You did a good job, kid.
Pretty much.
Thank you." Yeah, I mean, he's the guy.
Truth bomb here. When NJ and I found out that you were going to be on the show, we had similar reactions there. So thank you.
You're like our God.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh God. Well, that's depressing.
Oh, gee.
Do better. Find somebody better.
No.
I'm just saying, if
well,
you wanted to start a cult, you have to members.
Yeah.
That it would basically, the goal of the cult would be to go out and have nice meals in restaurants.
I'm in.
That'd be my motivation.
Hell yeah. And then weird sex stuff.
Fortunately,
after
I've
we eat, right? If it's a cult.
Yeah, well, of course. Yeah. Well, yeah. After you eat, though, really, at my age, no. It's too tired.
There we go.
Falling asleep by 8:30. That kind of thing.
Yeah,
We're at that point.
Honestly, that sounds better.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Michael. Like, you're
Of course.
starting 2024 off with a bang for me, so I very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. I hope it worked out well
And are
for you.
you on the social media at all? Can anyone find you? You have a website you want to?
Well, I used to be. I'm still on Twitter, but I don't go there anymore because I don't really like to participate in Elon's little Nazi show.
Yeah.
But I'm on there as what is it? Michael Grant BK, Michael Grant Books, Michael Grant BKS
Awesome.
on Twitter. I deleted Facebook years ago because people kept talking to me.
Honestly, a wise
I
decision.
didn't really want them to. It's just like, oh God, I dated you, and when you were 22 years old, I'm like, fucking hell, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. I'm not into that. Deleted Facebook. I have an Instagram account, but I only use it to ask. I used it because I had asked questions of a guy for something I was writing. But aside from that, no. And Catherine's, and don't tell anybody this, but hers is managed, her Twitter. So she's still on because she's got her followers mostly librarians and teachers, and it's an excellent way to talk to them. She's much more in the school. She's in the middle grade area, part of the market, very hooked into the school libraries as being a major, part of her market. So yeah, and I'm less. So I'm just talking to fans. So every now and then I'll go on and say, "Here's where we are with the Gone movie," and that's about it. And to be honest with you, I'm happier without it.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. Well, thanks again so much for being on the show. We had an absolute blast.
Sure.
Feel free to jump on whenever you want. We'd love to have you again.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. It was a good show.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for listening to our podcast, The Scream Kings.
Stay spooky.
Stay spooky.